The idea for Outrage came to me in 2018. I was between projects. I had done a play called Disconnection, which was about Scientology, which I knew something about through various things that is too long a story for this format. But it was a serious play, and I was taking it on, and it was controversial and provocative, and it was getting a lot of attention. But it was a serious. The tone was dramatic. Then immediately after that, I was sort of commissioned to write another play by someone who had seen Disconnection, and that play was about was also kind of a nonfiction story about a doctor who was dying of cancer, and he was processing his death in this very interesting way. And the New York Times wrote about it, and that's how this producer found out about it. And then he commissioned me to write it, and we were on this journey of interviewing and research and trying to get this thing just right. But man, these were serious topics, and I was yearning in that time around 2018 during that development process to be just kind of irreverent and funny, which I was with Engagement. And my play Years to the Day is much more kind of like whip smart, clever, funny dialogue, right? And I was missing that because I was kind of constrained by the nonfiction nature of these stories to get it right and to be serious. And you can't be glib about this stuff. You got to get it right. So I wanted to be funny. So I wrote at that time a play called Outrage. It was, again, kind of like what I was talking about with my first play, Engagement, a humorous excursion. I was like, a guy like me, straight white guy, middle-aged, trying to get through a single day in Los Angeles. I got 3 kids. The schools are crazy. The bureaucracy is nuts. The wokeness was kind of making me crazy. The political correctness over here. And it was kind of a sly, comedically oriented journey, like a day in the life of a guy like me. And I figured there are other guys like me, maybe not in Los Angeles as much, but around the country who probably could relate. And so I wrote that, and it was, again, kind of, I envisioned a 1-act, 80 minutes, something funny in and out. But then as I was conceiving of like producing or getting that mounted somehow, the other play, the cancer play, Circling, suddenly got a bit of traction. There was this opportunity. I could stage my own version of it. I could cast my actors. I could use my theater, because we have been doing just stage readings with highly professional people whose availability was this and that. And I was, again, kind of not as in control as I normally am. But the producer said, hey, why don't we, the two of us were like, how about if I mount it with my people, my theater, and we get a real version of this play that people can see. Workshop production. We won't charge money. We won't get reviews, but people can see it because they wanted to get this thing to New York, to Louisville, to Chicago. I mean, they were really serious about getting that play out there. And that happened. We opened February of 2020. Does that date sound familiar? We closed March 15 of 2020. Does that date sound familiar? We were the last, I'm pretty certain we were the last live performance in Los Angeles. I mean, people were running for the metaphorical and literal hills. They were battening down the hatches. They were locking themselves in. And there I was, like, doing my last production, my last night of this show. And thereafter, I found myself, first of all, the business got wiped out. I run an acting school. The Beverly Hills Playhouse was, by then, my operation. Milton had passed away years before. The business was wiped out overnight, gone. 3 cities, LA, San Francisco, New York, 300 actors, 300 students, management staff, an operation, gone overnight, wiped out. And that's 30 years of my life at that time. So I was reeling. I was really shaky because I didn't know if we'd be able to come back. Economically devastating. And then that summer, the George Floyd riots happened. And I found myself at the epicenter, unintentionally, of a mass, like a volcano of agitation, and then just hatred over Black Lives Matter and what was perceived to be my not saying enough, not doing enough to address those issues at that time. Now, from my angle, I was like, hey, listen, my 30 years of my adult life that was spent on this business, participating in it, learning it, being a protege of the guy who wrote it, ran it, and then taking it over and dealing with, that 30 years, that shot you've got at what you do with your life is gone. I'm trying to deal with that. I'm sorry. I'm not addressing this other thing because that's not my fight. My fight is my school right now, my business. It got shut down and I don't know what to do. Anyway, it was perceived I was being insensitive. if you remember that summer, things were very volatile, like just throw a match and you were going to just set off a conflagration. And that's what happened. I found myself at the sort of canceled. Some people took real umbrage at what they considered my lack of response. They lit a torch, a metaphorical torch, called me a racist, put it on social media. It started a firestorm of cancellation and acrimony. And you could have accused me of killing John F. Kennedy. You could have accused me of the Lincoln assassination, and it would have passed muster. Like, everyone was accusing me of everything. It was just this insane moment. Very shocking. Anyone who is listening to this who maybe has gone through a cancellation event, it is a shocking, unsettling, scary thing to go through. And it was a real test of friendships. A lot of friendships that did not pass the test at that moment for various reasons. Not saying right or wrong, just didn't pass the test, didn't pass what was needed at that moment. So it was this very shocking, alienating, crazy thing about which I could not write one word. People would say, like, gosh, are you going to be writing? I mean, you must be so, wow. Are you writing? I'm like, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm drinking, I'm walking the dog, and then I drink, and then I walk the dog. So it was there as this major event in my life. And I generally am writing about things that happened to me that I think might be interesting to others. I think a lot of writers start there, like, hey, this thing happened to me. I find that interesting. I'm pissed off. I found that hilarious, whatever. I talk to the student writers, and I say, hey, listen, what is moving your pen? What is the thing that is moving that pen across the page? Because it better have a point of view, and it better have something of you in it. But there better be a reason to move that pen, other than just that you think you can sell it as a pilot. Because that life won't mean as much as when you're moving it for a purpose. So certainly I had a reason to move a pen, but I couldn't do it because I was too close and I was too pissed off. And I had to save the business, which I ended up being able to do in large measure. So anyway, this is a very long answer for which I apologize, but there's a lot going on here in terms of what Outrage became. So this 2018 glib thing about a guy like me goes through my day and it's like, hey, the school board, it's really bureaucratic and silly. That wasn't going to cut it anymore. Like, this thing had happened and I felt it had to be talked about, because not because of me, but because you can see it in society. People are being canceled. People are canceling their friends, their family, over Trump, over COVID, over masks, over vaccine, over just general agitation about, like, everything was so highly evaluated that if you didn't agree with me, you had to get out of my life. And I found that fascinating and dangerous and scary. And I thought, that's what I'm writing about. That's what Outrage is now. And I went back to the 2018 play. I cut out all the super glib stuff. And I realized the structure of it, like, it's my story. It's a guy who had a certain life in the arts and in theater and in LA, and gets canceled in this moment. And then act two are the ramifications of that. Like, the structure came to me. I just went, oh, that'll work. And then you start moving the pen. So that's a super long answer, but it's a complicated story about how Outrage came about. It wasn't just like, hey, I woke up one day and I thought, hey, I'll write about cancellation. It was a big thing that happened to me, and then I saw it happening to others, and I was having really interesting conversations with people, good ones, bad ones, agreement, disagreement. And I just thought, I haven't heard this. I haven't heard this dramatized. I don't hear it in the theater. I'm not seeing it on TV. No one's writing about this, certainly not from the standpoint of a guy who went through it. And so I just went, I think I got something there that I have to offer to the space. And when I think I have that, then I can start writing. The world of Outrage is, in the script, I said it's 45/COVID adjacent. And the reason I did that is because I couldn't be locked to the timeline of 2020. Because, look, we were all locked down. So there was not a lot of people talking in person, which is not makes it tough to do a play. Like, there's a bunch of people and they're all locked in their rooms. Like, I don't want to do a play about that. Everyone was in their masks, and I don't want to do a play about people in masks. The events in terms of George Floyd, that is not an event that I felt could be argued about. Like, it was just too horrific and too clear. So I was like, I need to create a parallel world where these events can be arranged the way I want them to be. We don't have to name a president. We don't have to name anything, but it's a parallel world to contemporary Los Angeles. And that's where we are in the time range of 2020 to 2022. But the events are not actual calendar specific, like documentary style. I fabricated events and sequences so I could tell the story. The opening of Outrage is basically, again, a guy like me, an acting teacher, a writing teacher, and the smoke detectors in his house aren't working, which was in my original concept of Outrage, of it being like a whimsical, hey, try to get through your life. I had written this scene about the smoke detectors not working because my smoke detectors weren't working, and it was hilarious and like driving me nuts. I was like, there's a scene in there. I've never seen someone talk about this issue with the smoke detectors. So in this play, it's more of a metaphor for the events about to come. Like the smoke detectors are failing. So what could that lead to? A fire inspection is alluded to. Just certain things to plant where we're heading. But it's a teacher, a writing and acting teacher, and he's delivering a critique, and a student has written a scene, and it's about how she was on a blind date with a guy who voted for the current president. I just call him the current president. And she can't believe it. It's insane. How could anyone in Los Angeles have voted for the current president? This man is such a monster. And she's written a scene about that. The teacher is sort of like, I don't know if that's the hook of all time. I mean, it's not that surprising that someone, we've got a diverse city here. People vote all sorts of the place. She can't handle it. So it unfolds over a certain 72 hours, basically, of the class where he delivers this critique. The smoke detectors are not working at his house. Elaine is a friend of the student he's critiquing is a friend of his wife's. The three of them meet at the house about this critique, trying to solve it. And I created this kind of fugue that goes in and out of these realities to kind of unload a lot of basic information in a way that I thought was interesting and not too expositional. And that was dramatic. And it ends with this student, this friend, who's a college friend of his wife's, leaving and infuriated. Like, I can't be friends with you anymore. If you voted for this man, I cannot be friends. I can't be in your house. I'm out of here. See you later. And that's kind of where the play starts, is this moment of high agitation. People are losing it, and they're losing it in ways that we haven't seen before. Why is that happening? So then we go sort of through that day. Our lead goes to the theater. He runs a theater. The lighting board doesn't work. Just again, certain things that act as metaphors for it's about to all come down, and he has a fight with the guy he is working for, or a strong conversation with the guy that is a student and he works for about someone who's applying to the program. And they get into this sort of discussion about race and justice. And are people really upset about it when well-to-do white middle-class people are really upset about racism? Are they really upset about racism, or are they signing up for club membership? I think personally in LA, this is one of my more provocative opinions, I guess, that a lot of people who are signing up for the racial justice crusade are signing up for club membership. They want to be in the club of rightness, goodness, virtue. And anger is as I say in the play, anger is your membership fee. And so they have that discussion. Then the verdict comes in, right? There's a trial going on about a cop and a bad shooting. That is a fusion of kind of Trayvon and Michael Brown in terms of actual nonfiction cases in the last 10 years. So I created something that could be argued about. And then Ethan, who's the lead character, goes home. He gets into a big fight with his sister-in-law, the guy who's fixing the smoke detectors. His wife comes in, and again, the play's called Outrage. Everyone is outraged. Everyone is getting into it about these events, the events of the world, and his opinions, his inability. The verdict comes down, and this cop gets acquitted and of a bad shoot. And basically, the end of the act is the cancellation of this teacher by a bunch of students, sort of mirroring what happened to me in 2020. And then Act 2 is the consequence. 2 years later, what happens to him, what has happened to him psychologically, what happened to him with his friends, what happened to him professionally. And then I covered that ground in Act 2. So basically, Act 1 is the setup of his life, the moments of Los Angeles, current Los Angeles, and it's getting noisy, it's getting angry. There's a incendiary criminal case going on, and ignition, fire. Everything burns up. Friendships burn up. Buildings burn up. And then Act 2 is, then what? What happens because that happened? And that's basically the world of the play. So it's contemporary Los Angeles. I think you're going to hear, certainly people in Los Angeles will recognize the city and the conversations being had. And I think part of it is that I wanted to talk about my little corner of show business in a way, in a real way. Because there's the Kominsky method acting class and there's the Barry acting class. And I love those two shows. But usually when acting classes and the study of acting and this kind of conversation is portrayed, it's not really portrayed, I think, with great honesty. It's portrayed for comedic effect. It's generally the actors are buffoonish and silly. While I enjoy those things, I resent that no one's telling the real story of how that goes down. So I wanted to take that in a more serious direction, even though it's the entertainment business. We should entertain and have fun. So that is the world of Outrage. Well, the main themes of Outrage are, the lead character at one point says, have you ever thought about what we're doing to ourselves and what we are becoming? And in the moment, it's funny because he's talking to his sister-in-law who's going ape shit on Facebook. She's annihilated. She's in this fight with a guy on Facebook about this police shooting and this trial and this verdict. And she's going nuts. And I've written hilarious dialogue and she's going on and on and on and on with the most unbelievable curse words and agitation about this guy she wants to kill on Facebook. And at some point she goes completely nuts. And the lead guy says that line, have you ever thought about what we're doing to ourselves, what we've become? And I guess that's really the theme of the play, that as a guy in my 50s coming up, and it used to be hate the politician, but not the voter. Hate the politician, but not your friend who voted for him. That was an ethic that just didn't even need to be talked about. Then Trump came along in 2016 and broke everything. Just broke it. And it became hate the politician and the voter and your friend and your family and F them. And if they don't get on board, F them even more. Cancel, done, not coming over for Thanksgiving, no more coffee, canceled on Facebook, no more friends. And this shift happened. And I'm not saying it was because of Trump, but I think it's because of how the culture has moved with social media. And this goes back over 15 years since the iPhone. So I think it's part of a bigger movement that Trump was just a symptom of. He was just the manifestation of other things that have been building for a long time. So this is not a play about Donald Trump in any way. He's just part of it in terms of he was a lightning rod. He's an identifiable lightning rod around which you can build some fun dialogue and some fun situations. So that is the basic meaning of the play: is what have we done and what are we doing to ourselves and what have we become in giving into this hatred, giving into this passion about politics that is often dictated by others, serving others' goals and means through propaganda or whatever you want to look at it. I've come to believe that the red-blue game of politics being played in this country is just theater. It's just a little fantasy story laid out for all of us to play. The real game is something much more serious, much darker, and encompasses all of red and blue who are actually in power and control the money and control the weapons. So later on in the play, the lead guy says, he's in a fight with someone, and the guy says, like, this man, this politician is the worst human being on the planet. And the lead guy says, yeah, I just don't understand why that's more important than plays, parties, scenes from class, weddings, a million drinks, in a million places, the bricks of this friendship. Why is it that means nothing next to my having voted for someone that you hate? And that's kind of one of the major themes of the play. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Because politicians come and go, like real fast. Friendships should stay, and there should be understanding, and there should be tolerance. And we're in a very, very dangerous and intolerant moment, not just on politics. COVID also exacerbated all of this in many ways. You've got these weird, I'm sure many people are sort of putting together Venn diagrams of their friendships. Like, well, on politics, we disagree, but we can converse. On COVID, we were in agreement about lockdowns, but not about masks. But yes, on vaccines. And other people are like, well, I actually hated COVID from the start, and my friend does too. We totally disagree about the lockdowns and how unnecessary that was, but I think the vaccines are full of shit, and he's taken 7. So we can't talk about that. You know, everyone has these weird confluences, like, what can we talk about? What can we talk about? We disagree, but we can talk. We agree. Sometimes you agree, but you still can't. It's bizarre. It's just, and you start to wonder whether it's a part of a big design, which is not what I'm writing about, but it's something you wonder as a person who's kind of grown up in a different, I felt like the country I grew up in was just much different than what it has been over the last 3 or 4 years. So that's essentially what I'm writing about. What I would want the audience to get out of my play, I took great pains, and I went through a lot of drafts, and I went through a lot of writing, and I went through a lot of drinking wine and walking my dog to make sure that everyone who expresses an opinion in this play, to the best of my ability, is expressing it with integrity. So the people that my lead character, who's kind of the version of me, like an avatar of me in a way, the people he comes up against, I wanted to make sure that those fights were authentic, and that anyone watching the play from either side of that fight would say, yes, my point of view is being represented here. It's being represented honestly. So I really took pains to make sure that that happened. So what I would love in terms of what the audience experiences is some semblance of what we've all gone through, arranged, obviously, from my point of view, the events arranged around my story, but that are charging up, lighting up, and provoking thought about what we've done to ourselves and what we continue to do. And maybe some people who have been a little too quick on the trigger to cancel friends and family over opinions that used to be just things you could discuss and have a dialogue about, that maybe they walk out and reconsider whether that's actually the best way to go. And what are the real ramifications of cancellation when people are too quick to give into their passion and too slow to stand up for what's important on a human level. As a friend, like, what does it mean to be a friend? Does a friend give another friend a lecture about politics and morality? Or does a friend simply show up when the shit hits the fan, if I can say the S word? When the shit hits the fan, a friend shows up with a gun, it's in the play, with a gun, some cash, a baseball bat, like, let's go, ready to go, ready to defend. The lectures can come later. The, hey, what were you thinking, can come later. But the main reason you're a friend is that you're there when the blank hits the fan. And I think we can all think about that a bit more. Are we really there? Or are we here? Anything you need, you know what I mean? And we've all experienced it when we're going through something, we're sick, some tragedy, and someone says, like, anything you need. It's a nice thing to say. They're saying it, and then there's the people who show up with groceries. There's the people who show up at your door and say, hey, here's cash. I know you need it. Here it is. Accept it. See you later. Like, there's a difference there. And I guess I'm trying to advocate for a certain kind of relationship between people, and not one that's just conducted on social media and serving the moral virtue and the tribal membership. Because LA is kind of a tribal city. And I think people are giving up a lot to be a part of some of these tribes. So that's kind of what I'm writing. Why should people come? I believe that the feedback I'm getting, which I'm very grateful for, the reviews actually have been largely positive, which I was not expecting. I am taking on what I consider to be a very rigid and boring intellectual life in Los Angeles culture. Like, you don't take that on and expect to be reviewed well, like, not in this town. We're actually getting reviewed pretty well, which was surprising to me. But the best feedback I'm getting is private. I mean, including an email I got like 5 minutes before I logged onto this call from an old friend who I hadn't seen in years. Not in my ballpark politically by any stretch. And that's what's fun, is that they're writing and they're saying, man, I'm still thinking about your play. 10 days later, I'm still talking with my wife about your play. I'm going to come back and bring some friends. You know, people are bringing people, they're sending people to the play. They want to tell their friends about it so that they see it, so that they can have a conversation about it. And I think that is what theater should do, man. Like, theater shouldn't be pandering to the easiest. One guy emailed me, as a TV writer, actually, talented one. And he said, you know, when people write these plays about whatever the current moral supposed dilemma is, tolerance for this person, that race, this orientation, whatever, and it's a play about, you know, the safest stuff that you can argue in liberal culture these days. He called it bravery on the cheap. He says it's like taking a brave stand against crib death. You're not risking anything. And what he appreciated is you're risking everything to say what you're saying in this play. And he says that's what theater should do. And so why should people see the play? Because I don't think you're going to hear what is being talked about here anywhere else. And I'm not trying to say that as some egotistical thing, like only I could possibly. At this moment, I haven't seen it. I'm not hearing it. I haven't heard about it. A play that is talking about these issues in this way, in a provocative way. It's called Outrage for a reason, but you're going to be fine. You're going to come out of intermission and you're going to be talking. You're going to come out at the end. You're going to be talking, thinking. And that's the feedback I'm getting privately and from people after the play. People are sticking to it. They're hanging around the theater. When you do enough of these things, you can tell, like, are people sticking or are they running? No, people are sticking outside the theater. They're talking. They want to meet me. They want to talk to the cast. And that's a good sign. So I think that's why you come. My name is Alan Barton. I am the writer and director of a new play called Outrage. And I implore anyone to come out and hear a new conversation about what's going on in this world. It's not a conversation that you have heard in the theater. I can almost guarantee it. You haven't heard it on TV. Not the way we're talking about it down there with this show. Then I'd love to see you there.